Picture this. It's 1950 Miami Airport. A woman in modest clothes stands in the customs line clutching a small bag. Inside, wrapped in her nightgown, lies a 137-carat sapphire tiara, once the pride of Romanian royalty. "What have you got there anyway?" "A corpse," jokes the customs officer, completely unaware he's about to handle a remnant of an entire vanished world. This woman is Princess Ileana, and her story is just one thread in a much larger tapestry. For centuries, sapphires have been more than mere gemstones in royal collections. They've been symbols of loyalty, divine favor, and unshakable power. The deep blue stones adorned the heads of empresses and queens, witnessed coronations and state dinners, survived revolutions and wars. But here's what strikes me most. Today, these very same sapphires that once commanded reverence now live behind museum glass or disappear into private collections, stripped of their voices. What happened to them? Where did all these magnificent royal sapphires go, and why do the ones that survive seem to carry such profound silence? Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. Our journey into silence has to start with the Romanovs, doesn't it? It's a story of such blinding opulence followed by absolute darkness, and their lost jewels are the most haunting symbols of that vanished world. Let's start with what should have been a happy story. The sapphire tiara created by court jeweler Coakley around 1894. It was commissioned as the ultimate wedding gift. Tsar Alexander III and his wife Maria Fyodorovna wanted to mark their son Nicholas's marriage to Princess Alix of Hesse with something truly extraordinary. The tiara was spectacular, its design resembling fireworks frozen in diamonds and sapphires, a celebration captured in precious stones. The Hermitage still holds the original watercolor sketches of this commission, showing us exactly how magnificent the complete parure once was. The tiara, a mirror necklace, and matching brooches, all ablaze with Ceylon sapphires set in intricate gold work. Tsarina Alexandra Fyodorovna adored it. She wore the tiara frequently, and it became one of her signature pieces, appearing in official portraits and at state functions throughout her reign. But then came 1917. When the Bolsheviks seized power, they didn't just take the throne, they took everything. The imperial jewels were confiscated, catalogued, and eventually put on display as symbols of the old regime's excess. In 1925, 8 years after the revolution, they organized a grand exhibition of the seized treasures. Room after room of tiaras, necklaces, and brooches, the accumulated glory of centuries, were laid out like evidence in a trial. There, in a photograph from that exhibition, we can see the Coakley sapphire tiara one last time. It sits among dozens of other pieces, still magnificent but somehow diminished, stripped of context and meaning, just another pretty object in a case. And that was its last appearance. After 1925, the trail goes cold. Soviet records mention sales to foreign buyers, pieces being broken up for their component parts, mysterious transactions with unnamed dealers. The Coakley tiara, that celebration of love and dynasty, simply vanished into the chaos of a revolution that had no use for such symbols. If the Coakley tiara's story is one of quiet disappearance, then the tale of Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna's sapphire kokoshnik is pure adventure. The kind of jewelry story that reads like a spy novel, complete with daring rescues, international intrigue, and a heartbreaking ending. Maria Pavlovna, known as Grand Duchess Vladimir, was perhaps the most formidable jewelry collector in Romanov history. When she wanted something, she got it. And what she wanted, desperately, was a particular sapphire kokoshnik that had belonged to her late mother-in-law. But when that tiara went to someone else instead, Maria Pavlovna did what any sensible woman with unlimited resources would do. She commissioned something even better. Enter Cartier. In 1909, Louis Cartier himself traveled to St. Petersburg to personally deliver Maria Pavlovna's new creation, a kokoshnik featuring an enormous 137.2-carat cushion-cut sapphire surrounded by smaller cabochon sapphires. It was magnificent, imposing, absolutely imperial. But then came the revolution, and with it, one of the most audacious jewelry heists in history. As the Bolsheviks closed in, Maria Pavlovna fled south, leaving her treasures hidden in the Vladimir Palace. When it became clear she would never return, she sent her son Grand Duke Boris and his friend Bertie Stopford on an impossible mission: break into the palace, find the jewels, and smuggle them out of revolutionary Russia. Disguised as workmen, they did exactly that. The priceless collection was stuffed into Gladstone bags and spirited out of the country in a scene worthy of Hollywood. The Vladimir sapphire kokoshnik had survived the fall of an empire. But survival, as we'll learn, doesn't guarantee a happy ending. The tiara found its way to Queen Marie of Romania, who made it her signature piece, wearing it to her coronation and countless state occasions. When she died, it passed to her daughter, Princess Ileana. And that's where our opening scene comes in. Miami, 1950, the customs officer and the nightgown. Princess Ileana sold the kokoshnik to Cartier for a fraction of its value. She needed money for her children's education, she explained. It was both beautiful and splendid, but my children were in need. As it stood, it neither fed us, nor clothed us, nor warmed us. Cartier took the tiara, and then silence. The fate of this extraordinary piece remains unknown to this day. Did they break it apart? Sell it to a private collector? Transform it into something unrecognizable? We may never know. The Vladimir sapphire kokoshnik, which survived revolution, war, and exile, simply vanished into the anonymity of commerce. The fall of the Romanovs was a sudden, violent severing from the past, but not all royal jewels were lost to revolution. Some faced a much slower, quieter, and distinctly more modern fate, the auction block. In the 20th and 21st centuries, changing fortunes, tax laws, and the simple pressures of modern life meant that for some noble families, history itself had a price tag. Our first story of a sold destiny even begins with a Romanov gift, but one with a very different trajectory. In 1898, as a wedding present for the Danish royal bride, Princess Alexandrine, Tsar Nicholas II, and Tsarina Alexandra sent this stunning tiara. Attributed to the St. Petersburg jeweler Bolin, its 8 beautiful Ceylon sapphires were a tangible link between the two great European courts, a very personal token of a family alliance that would soon be shattered by history. What's so interesting to me is that Queen Alexandrine herself was never actually photographed wearing it as a tiara. Instead, she preferred to detach the sapphire elements and wear them individually as brooches and pendants. In 1933, she continued the tradition of personal giving, presenting it to her own daughter-in-law, Princess Caroline Mathilde, as a wedding gift. It was passed down through the family, a cherished piece worn to royal weddings and celebrations for generations. But in 2018, nearly 120 years after it was created, its story took that very modern turn. The 3 countesses who had inherited it, women who live ordinary, middle-class lives with no occasion for such grand jewelry, put the tiara up for sale at an auction in Copenhagen. From a personal gift between an emperor and a queen, it became Lot 7, its history and provenance detailed in a catalog for potential bidders. But here's the wonderful and slightly bittersweet twist in this tale. After the sale, the tiara reappeared, not hidden away in a private vault, but on loan to the Royal Danish Collection for public display, first at Amalienborg and later at Koldinghus Castle. And while I'm thrilled it's safe and can be seen by the public, it's important to understand it is still privately owned. The royal family has the right to use items in their own collections, but that right doesn't extend to pieces on loan, so unless the owner one day gifts or bequeaths it back to the crown, we will never see Queen Mary of Denmark wearing this historic Romanov gift. It is so close, yet so far from being a living royal jewel again. But while one tiara's journey to a museum was a quiet one, another's was a national drama. This is a jewel born from one of history's greatest love stories, Queen Victoria's sapphire coronet. It was designed in 1842 by Prince Albert himself for his young bride and made by the jeweler Joseph Kitching for the sum of £415. It's so delicate and personal, a tiny circlet of sapphires and diamonds that perfectly captures the youthful, romantic spirit of their love. We see it in that iconic 1842 Winterhalter portrait, perched artfully on the back of her head. It was a deliberate choice, a romantic nod to the 17th century style of Queen Henrietta Maria, showing just how involved Albert was in shaping Victoria's royal image. This wasn't a formal state crown, it was a jewel of sentiment. And that's why, after Albert's devastating death in 1861, it was one of the very few pieces with colored stones that she continued to wear. A poignant example is the 1866 State Opening of Parliament, her first since his death. She wore this small, brilliant blue coronet resting atop her white widow's cap, a powerful symbol of a grieving queen carrying out her duty, with her husband's memory still crowning her. After Victoria's death in 1901, the coronet passed quietly through the male line to Edward VII, then George V, neither of their wives ever wearing it publicly. King George V and Queen Mary gave it as a wedding gift to their only daughter, Princess Mary, in 1922. It remained a cherished and worn piece in the Harewood family for nearly a century. But in 2016, its story took a dramatic turn. Having been privately sold, its new owner applied for a license to take it out of the United Kingdom. It was about to be lost to the nation forever. That's when the British government stepped in, imposing a temporary export ban and declaring it a national treasure. In a wonderful victory for public heritage, the Victoria and Albert Museum acquired the coronet. And while I'm so glad it was saved, and now everyone can admire its beauty and history, I can't help but feel a little sad. It means this incredibly romantic and personal piece will never again be worn by a British queen. Wouldn't it have been wonderful to see this touching piece of history continue its journey on the heads of future queens, a living link back to Victoria and her great love? Perhaps no story illustrates the gradual erosion of royal collections better than the Cambridge sapphire parure. This wasn't a single dramatic sale, but a slow dissolution, a magnificent 19th century ensemble picked apart piece by piece across decades. The parure began with Princess Augusta, Duchess of Cambridge, in the early 1800s. Her daughter Augusta wore the complete set at her 1843 wedding to the Grand Duke of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, creating a sensation with the tiara, stomacher, necklace, and brooches all coordinating in perfect harmony. When Grand Duchess Augusta died in 1916, she passed the sapphires to her beloved niece, Queen Mary. But Mary, ever the modifier, couldn't leave well enough alone. She converted parts of the necklace into brooches and earrings, modified the stomacher, and made the tiara convertible to wear as a necklace. While these changes showed Mary's practical approach to jewelry, they also began the parure's fragmentation. In 1934, Mary gave the modified set to Princess Marina of Greece as a wedding gift. For over 3 decades, Marina made these sapphires her signature, wearing them to state visits, coronations, and gala performances. The parure reached its zenith during Marina's tenure, photographed extensively, worn with confidence, representing the golden age of mid-20th century royal glamour. But when Marina died in 1968, financial realities began to intrude. The current Duke and Duchess of Kent inherited magnificent jewels, but faced the costs of maintaining them. By the 1980s, difficult decisions loomed. The original tiara disappeared first, replaced by a smaller, button-style version using salvaged elements. Throughout the 1990s, more pieces vanished: the stomacher, parts of necklaces, individual brooches. Some pieces reportedly went to Moira Fine Jewelry in London, others to private collectors. What makes this particularly poignant is that we can track the parure's journey through photographs. Princess Augusta's 1861 portrait showing the complete ensemble, Queen Mary's 1920s modifications, Princess Marina's glamorous 1960s appearances, and then nothing. The Cambridge sapphires reveal how even the most magnificent royal jewelry can simply disappear through gradual erosion, one piece at a time, until only memories remain. Royal jewels have always been the ultimate diplomats. Long before modern alliances were forged in boardrooms, they were sealed in throne rooms with the clasping of a necklace or the placement of a tiara. These sapphires didn't just belong to one family. They traveled, crossing borders as part of a dowry or a wedding gift, weaving the blue thread of their legacy through the great houses of Europe. Sometimes this created breathtaking new collections, and sometimes it just made their eventual dispersal even more poignant. Let's start in Portugal with a tiara that truly embodies the majesty of its first owner. This is the sapphire tiara of Queen Maria II. Created in the 1840s, it's a magnificent piece, perfectly reflecting the Portuguese national colors of the time, blue and white, with its 5 stunning sapphires and over 1,400 diamonds. In her most famous portrait, the one that hangs in the Ajuda Palace in Lisbon, she wears it in that elegant 19th century style, like a small crown placed towards the back of her head. It was also incredibly versatile. The 9 main elements could be detached and worn as individual brooches, and the base could even be worn on its own as a simple bandeau. It was a jewel designed to be lived in. Tragically, Queen Maria II died in childbirth at just 34. Her beautiful tiara was inherited by her eldest daughter, Infanta Antonia, and here is where the jewel's diplomatic journey begins. In 1861, Antonia married into a German royal house, becoming the wife of Prince Leopold of Hohenzollern. And so, the Portuguese tiara left Lisbon and began a new chapter of its life in Germany. For over a century, it became a treasured heirloom of the Hohenzollern princely family. We see it worn by Princess Margaret Carola of Saxony in the 1920s, and later in 1967 on Princess Birgitta of Sweden at the wedding of Queen Margrethe II of Denmark. It was a jewel that continued to witness royal history. Then, in 2021, its journey took a sharp modern turn. The tiara appeared in a Christie's catalog in Geneva. After more than 170 years of royal ownership, it was up for auction. The Portuguese state even tried to buy it back, to bring this piece of their history home, but they were outbid. The final hammer price was a staggering 1,770,000 Swiss francs. Thankfully, the private collector who bought it generously allowed it to be displayed for a year at the Portuguese Crown Treasure Museum, a brief, beautiful homecoming before it disappeared back into a private vault. But what makes this story even more extraordinary is that Maria II's tiara wasn't the only historic sapphire jewel in the Hohenzollern collection, and it wasn't the only one sold that day. This brings us to the second set of jewels, the magnificent sapphire parure of Stephanie de Beauharnais, the adopted daughter of Napoleon Bonaparte. Created in the early 1800s, this was an entire suite of 9 pieces, a tiara, a necklace, earrings, brooches, pendants, a ring, and a bracelet, all set with 38 glorious sapphires from Ceylon. A note found with the jewels suggests it was a gift from Stephanie's cousin, Hortense de Beauharnais, the daughter of Empress Josephine. Like the Portuguese tiara, this parure also found its way to the Hohenzollern family through a dynastic marriage. Stephanie's daughter Josephine became a princess of Hohenzollern. Then, in that same generation, her son, Prince Leopold, married Infanta Antonia of Portugal. And with that single wedding in 1861, these 2 legendary sapphire collections were united. The Portuguese tiara and the French Napoleonic parure now lived side by side, used for decades by the family as one spectacular grand set. It's a perfect illustration of how marriage could merge not just bloodlines, but treasure chests. For over a century, they remained together. But the 2021 Christie's auction that sold Maria II's tiara also sealed the fate of Stephanie's parure. They were put up for sale on the very same day. But while the tiara was sold as a single piece, the Beauharnais parure was broken up. It was sold as 9 individual lots. The tiara went to one bidder, the necklace to another, the earrings to a third. A set that had survived the fall of empires and 2 centuries of history was scattered forever in a single afternoon. A union forged by marriage was undone by the market. Sometimes, however, the path away from a family leads not to an auction, but to a museum, a different kind of silent fate. This is the story of the Orleans sapphire parure. Its origins are, once again, traced back to Empress Josephine and her daughter Hortense. In 1821, Hortense, then in exile, sold the parure for 160,000 francs to the future king of the French, Louis Philippe. He bought it for his wife, Queen Marie-Amélie. It was her personal property and became one of her most iconic jewels, famously depicted in her 1836 portrait. The parure remained in the House of Orleans for over 160 years, passing from one generation to the next, a constant symbol of their royal claim. The last Countess of Paris wore it to some of the grandest royal events of the 20th century, including the wedding ball of King Juan Carlos and Queen Sofia of Spain. But by the 1980s, the family's vast fortune had been exhausted. In 1985, the Count of Paris made a difficult decision. He sold the entire historic parure. But he didn't sell it to a private collector or at auction. He sold it to the Musée du Louvre. Today, it sits in the Galerie d'Apollon, safe and preserved for eternity, its provenance secure. It will never be broken up or lost, but it will also never again be worn. It's a jewel in perpetuity, but a jewel that no longer lives. What do you think? Is this the ideal solution? A perfect compromise between preservation and loss? Or is it just another beautiful thing locked away in silence? These jewels show us that even when they survive, their paths can diverge so dramatically. But what about the ones that haven't been sold and haven't been lost, yet still remain unseen? And so we come to the final category, which is perhaps the most tantalizing of all. The jewels that are not lost, not sold, not destroyed, but are simply silent. They exist, tucked away in royal vaults, but have vanished from public life. They are ghosts in plain sight, their absence a quiet mystery. Some of these are sleeping giants, resting in family vaults, waiting for an occasion grand enough to wake them. And I can't think of a better example than the absolutely colossal Württemberg sapphire tiara. This isn't just a tiara, it's an event. A tidal wave of sapphires and diamonds in a grand floral design, part of a complete parure with a massive necklace, earrings, and a brooch. Just looking at pictures of it, you can almost feel the weight. It's a jewel that demands a full-scale royal ball and a grand entrance. Its exact origins are a bit of a mystery, which I always love. It could be an old Orleans heirloom or have come into the family through one of their many marriages to Austrian archduchesses. But its modern story really begins with Archduchess Rosa, Duchess of Württemberg. In the 1950s and 60s, she cemented its reputation as the family's big gun, wearing the full, breathtaking set to the grandest royal weddings of the era, including the wedding ball of the future King Juan Carlos and Queen Sofia of Spain. And then, the tiara passed to her daughter-in-law, the artist Princess Diane of Orleans, who wore it for the weddings of her own children in the late 80s and early 90s. The last time this magnificent heirloom was seen in all its glory was at her son's wedding ball. That was in 1993, over 30 years ago. So why the long silence? Is it simply too magnificent, too heavy for the more subdued galas of today? Or is it waiting patiently in the vault for the next great family event? Perhaps the wedding of the next head of the house. It's not lost. It's not sold. It's simply waiting. But our final sapphire story is a true mystery. It's the case of a tiara that was worn by one of the 20th century's most glamorous princesses, and then, without explanation, simply wasn't seen again. This is Queen Mary's sapphire sunray bandeau. It's a beautiful, flexible diamond bandeau in a sunray or kokoschnik style, with a large central sapphire and diamond cluster that can be detached and worn as a brooch. Its origins are a little murky. One source, Leslie Field, suggests it's another Romanov jewel, purchased by Queen Mary from the estate of the Dowager Empress Marie Fyodorovna of Russia. It's certainly possible, as Mary was a prolific and savvy collector of imperial treasures, but there are no public records to confirm it. Queen Mary wore it periodically, sometimes even swapping out the sapphire for one of her famous emeralds. After her death, the trail gets interesting. The bandeau was apparently left to the Queen Mother, but she never wore it in public. Instead, she loaned it for a number of years to her younger daughter, Princess Margaret, and Margaret, with her impeccable, fashion-forward style, wore it often in the 1950s and early 1960s. We see her in it on a tour of the Caribbean in 1958, and at the wedding of Princess Astrid of Norway in 1961. It suited her perfectly. It was elegant, modern, and undeniably regal. And then, nothing. After those appearances in the early 60s, the sapphire sunray bandeau completely vanishes from view. It has not been seen in public for over 60 years. So where is it? This is the great unanswered question. If it belonged to the Queen Mother, it would have been inherited by Queen Elizabeth II in 2002 and would now be in the vaults of King Charles. If it belonged to Princess Margaret, it's possible it was returned to the main royal collection after her death, or it could have been inherited by one of her children, Lady Sarah Chatto or the Earl of Snowdon. The fact that it wasn't included in the major auction of her jewels at Christie's suggests it's likely still in the family somewhere. But why has it never been worn? By the Queen? By other royals? By anyone? For a piece this beautiful and this wearable, its 6 decades of silence are truly baffling. It's a treasure in waiting, a mystery hidden in the heart of the royal vaults. When I look back at all these sapphire stories, what strikes me most is how fragile even the most dazzling legacies can be. Crowns, tiaras, parures, they were created as symbols of permanence, yet time has shown us just how easily they can vanish from the stage of history. Some were broken apart in revolutions, some were sold out of necessity, and others now sleep in museums or vaults, beautiful but silent. And yet, silence doesn't mean oblivion. These sapphires still carry with them the weight of love stories, of dynasties, of triumphs and tragedies. Their voices may no longer ring out in ballrooms or at state banquets, but we can still hear them if we pause long enough to listen. For me, each of these stories is a small window into a world that's gone, a reminder that even the most beautiful things are subject to the currents of history. I'd love to know, which of these stories resonated with you the most? Was it the tragic romance of Victoria's coronet, the daring escape of the Vladimir Kokoshnik, or the quiet fading of the Cambridge parure? Do you think it's better that these jewels are preserved behind glass forever? Or would you rather see them continue to live in the hands of queens and princesses? If you enjoyed this journey, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you won't miss the next story. Thank you so much for watching and spending this time with me. Because in the end, the jewels may be silent, but their stories are not as long as we keep telling them.